Hi guys, how you doing? All right. I just wanted to say a few comments regarding the statement of the president this morning and his press briefing when he spoke about the issue of gasoline or kerosene and going to a gas station to disinfect your mask or hands. So, I've seen a lot of posts about this from various media organisations, including the BBC, including some Western media and some Western newspapers who don't really understand the full issue. The problem is, as I've said before, it's very easy to take a whole speech of President Duterte, which might be over an hour or an hour and a half, and extract a few words from that speech. And this is exactly what Rappler are very fond of doing, and some biased media in the Philippines. They will extract 2 minutes from an hour and a half speech. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair to the president. See, the thing is, people need to understand President Duterte. People need to understand the way that he talks, the way that he speaks to his detractors, the way that he speaks to his accusers or people who want him ousted. He has a certain manner, he has a certain jest. Secretary Harry Roque said the other week that the president was only joking when he spoke about using gasoline to disinfect your mask. And of course, the president has said this morning that he wasn't joking and that he was being completely serious. To put this into perspective, there is talk, I've read about this on the internet, and it's very, very clear that gasoline or kerosene is a disinfectant. That's a fact because I've looked at that online. However, gasoline and kerosene can cause problems with dermatitis, can cause problems when you breathe it in. There is a risk that it will affect your breathing. That is true. So obviously, if somebody was to get their mask and pour kerosene all over it, and pour kerosene all over their hands, and then light up a cigarette, there could be a fire. And that's not disputed. There are risks. However, the fact can't be disputed that gasoline and kerosene are a form of disinfectant. But obviously, you're not going to douse yourself in kerosene, you're not going to douse yourself in gasoline. That would be a stupid and irresponsible thing to do. And the president, I'm sure, understands that people can take from it what they will. There are traditional methods, there are maybe methods in the Philippines that have been used by days gone by, and maybe they may not be the most accurate method, they may not be the most up-to-date method, but of course, generationally, you would be told that they work and people would carry out that procedure and there wouldn't be any problems. However, the president faces an issue in the international bias media, and organisations like Rappler are just waiting for the president to say something that they don't agree with, or they're waiting for something that might cause controversy, or they're waiting for the president to say he would kill somebody, for example. A lot of the president's style is to use rhetoric. The way that he talks, he's addressing certain audiences, he's addressing certain people. And I think he's making it very clear that he's the president of the Philippines, and obviously he is also a citizen of the Philippines. And of course he can give his personal advice. Of course he can give down advice about what he would do or how he would disinfect his own mask. It doesn't mean that every single citizen in the Philippines would then follow that. He wouldn't expect every single citizen in the Philippines to follow that. He was just giving what he thought was a little bit of helpful advice based on the premise that it is possible to disinfect something using gasoline. And he hasn't read too much into it. He hasn't overanalyzed it. He hasn't really, he doesn't really expect anybody to pour gasoline over their mask and then light a match, for example. He doesn't expect that. He doesn't think that the Filipino people would be so stupid as to listen to directly his instructions and follow his instructions. I think if you look at his body language, if you look at his facial expressions, although he said that he's not joking, or that he's not making a joke. Of course he's not making a joke. When he has the press conferences, or when he has these conferences in the morning, they are completely serious. It's the President of the Republic of the Philippines addressing the Filipino people, addressing the nation. But I've listened to President Duterte for the last 4 years. I've listened to the majority of his speeches. If I haven't been able to listen to them in Tagalog because I can't speak Tagalog, what I've done is I've asked somebody to translate for me. I've watched it on YouTube with translation. I've gone on Google Translate. I've tried to understand exactly what he's saying. And I haven't just listened to 2 minutes of the speech and made them into 10,000 words. If I'm going to analyze a speech, for example, the State of the Nation address, I listened to the State of the Nation address in its entirety 3 times before I made any comment whatsoever. So I would say to all of these bashers, to all of the people who are making a joke about the president's latest statement, what they should do, and I advise them to do this, is to listen to the president very carefully over the last 4 years, to understand how he talks, to understand his body language, to understand his rhetoric, to understand his facial expressions. If you understand all of this, you will understand the style of the president and the way that the president communicates. I've said this before and I'll say it again. You know, there are so many politicians who hide behind fancy words, or there are so many politicians who make promises that they can't keep, or broken promises. President Duterte is not like that. He's made it very clear. When he addresses the nation or the Filipino people, he does so as the father of the nation, or the father of the Filipino people. He said also very clearly that he listens to the science, and he's not just plucking figures out the air. He's not just imposing some kind of quarantine himself. He listens to the science, he listens to the scientific advice, and he follows that advice. However, sometimes scientists would use figures and you know, complicated language, and you know, sometimes it needs to be broken down. And what the president is very, very good at doing, and I wish a lot more Western politicians would do this, is almost visit your house, sit down in your living room, and speak to you like a friend. So when President Duterte said the other day that they are running out of budget, you know, they need help, they might need to borrow this, they might need to borrow that, he wasn't hiding behind a lot of rhetoric. He wasn't hiding behind a lot of long words. He was simply saying that this pandemic is an issue, and it's created a problem. And he's been honest with the Filipino people, and that's what you would expect. So in summary, you know, when Harry Roque said the president was joking, that's fine. That's Harry Roque's job. Harry Roque is there to speak to the press, to speak on behalf of the president. When he thinks there's something that needs clarification, that's the job of Secretary Harry Roque. And of course, we all appreciate that, and we think that Secretary Harry Roque is doing a great job. But there are just sometimes, maybe, as in this issue, where President Duterte wants to tackle it himself or handle it himself. And I think he was responding to the other day where he spoke about gasoline, and it got into all the newspapers like the Rappler and all these biased media organizations. And I think he wasn't joking, but I think what he was saying is, I'm the president, this is how it is. You know, this is my advice. This is what I would do. It doesn't necessarily mean that you could do that if you're stupid, unless you're stupid. Nobody's going to go to a petrol station and pour gasoline all over their face and at the same time light a cigarette, because nobody's so stupid. And if somebody goes ahead and physically does that, then that's their own responsibility, their own look at. That's not the responsibility of the president. People say that he gives information and he shouldn't give false information or misinformation. It's nothing like that. The president is a citizen of the Republic of the Philippines. He is allowed to give his own personal opinion. He is allowed to talk about what he did, or you know, an old wives' tale, if you like, or a traditional thing that maybe happened in a particular area. The president is allowed to do that. As I said, he's not a politician who's hiding behind rhetoric. He's not a politician who's hiding behind fancy words or trying to come up with excuses. He is a human being. He is a citizen of the Philippines. And, you know, he has a certain way of doing things. So in conclusion, you know, I'm not saying the president was joking when he said that this morning, because he wasn't joking. That's quite right. He wasn't joking. That is a manner of speech, a manner of talking. But if you analyze the whole speech, if you look at his body language, if you look at the way he was smiling, you know, anybody could see that's the style of the president. It doesn't mean that he's lying. It doesn't mean that he's spreading false information. That's just the style of the president. So I'm very disappointed to see organizations like the BBC, foreign media, Rappler, putting all this thing about last week the president said this week the president said that, don't use gasoline, and then other organizations would come out and say don't use gasoline as well. You know, people are not stupid, people are not babies, and it's the responsibility of people to discern what is the case and what is something that was just said in rhetoric. Anyway, that's my opinion, and I wish the president very well. I send him my very best wishes. I've made this post because some people have been challenging me this morning, particularly some from the opposition, and saying that the president of the Republic of the Philippines shouldn't be making these kind of statements. Well, as I said, if you analyze the whole statement, you will see that's his style, and you will see that's the same rhetoric that he always uses. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Best wishes. So I'm just going to read a couple of these comments. Leo DePaul, he's a brilliant president. We don't have any doubt about that. Xavier Chua, preach. Biased media nowadays are thirsty for views and they need to drink a lot of petrol. That's exactly right. You know, if the biased media reported the good news all the time, for example, the president has signed the Universal Healthcare Act. The president has signed a bill granting the Philippine passport to last for 10 years instead of 5 years. The president has signed a bill to ensure that people don't have to pay deposits when they go into hospital. The president has signed a bill helping people. He's established a one-stop shop or a port of call for people who have medical needs. You know, and of course the Build program. You know, if the biased media was to comment on that, people wouldn't be interested. People wouldn't read it. The only way that the biased media can get traction is to pick up on one little statement or a 2-minute speech within an hour and a half or within 2 hours. And then they put it at the front row of their newspaper. They get thousands of hits, and this is their game, this is their tactic, this is the way they finance themselves, and this is the way that they make money. You know, funny news, bad news, controversial news sells newspapers. and you know, irregular news like the president's doing a fantastic job, crime is down, corruption's down. Nobody's going to hear that. Nobody's going to be interested to hear that. And this is the thing. So in fact, the biased media absolutely love this. And of course they're going to say that the president's not true, and that make fun of him, because that's what sells their newspapers. Danny, thank you so much for supporting the president. Danny again said precisely. Miley Taylor said, still love my president, no doubt for him. Cher Gray said they can't take their this power thing. This is why I love PRRD. They can never beat him, but we love him in every way that he says. Sonia says his term use of gasoline is exaggerated. Soap and detergent is much more cheaper than gasoline. President Duterte was just sarcastic to some idiots. I completely agree with you. You know, the president wasn't making a joke necessarily. The president wasn't lying. The president wasn't spreading fake news. People have to understand the president and analyse the president. That is his style. You know, he's been around for a long time. He's been mayor of Davao for many, many years. And this is the way that he talks. This is the way that he operates. Why should he change now just because he's president of the Philippines? As he said, he didn't necessarily want to do the job anyway. You know, you need to take him how you find him. You need to capture the good things that's happened. The Davao has improved. The Philippines has a reduction in crime, a reduction in illegal drugs, and this is as a result of the president. He's not perfect. He's never been claimed to be perfect. Yes, he does curse. Yes, he does swear. But the fact is, he cares for the Filipino people like a father. You know, I've been watching him now for the last 4 years, and people say I'm meddling in the Philippines, or I'm somehow I don't live in the Philippines. No, you're right, I don't live in the Philippines, but I have an interest in the president, and I've spent the last 4 years analysing him and understanding him, because I consider him to be a great person, and I consider him to be a great leader, and I like to hear what he has to say. I like to hear how he addresses the Filipino people. So I do watch him, and I think I do understand him. And I think the problem is these wokes, these naysayers, these accusers of him will take every single word that he says and they will turn it around, or they will change it into something it's not. And that is their style. They want to oust the president. Well, I say this to them. President Duterte has been in office now for 4 years. He has a satisfaction rating of over 80%. As Stephen Sakor said in the recent Hard Talk, any Western leader would be jumping up and down, and they'd think they won the lottery if they have an 80% satisfaction rating, because most of them have 30 or 40% at best. The president is dearly loved by 80% of the Filipino people. There are 110 million Filipinos. If you look at 80% of that, you know, you're to do the maths, you're looking at maybe 90 or 90 million Filipinos, according to surveys, approve of the president, or at the very least, the 21 million Filipinos who voted for him. Approve of him, approve of his methods, approve of the way he is. Yes, he may not be a conventional politician, but neither's Trump, neither's the Chinese president, neither are many other presidents around the world. Politics is changing, and people need to understand that. People need to understand that President Duterte is a president who truly cares for the people. He is a father of the Filipino people, but he speaks in a certain way. He uses a certain rhetoric. It doesn't mean that he's laughing or he's making any kind of joke. That's just the way he is, and I love him dearly for it, and will continue supporting him. And I'm quite sure that he will remain president for the rest of his term, and I know is dearly loved by many, many Filipinos across the Philippines. Stay safe, President Duterte. Stay well, and best wishes.